And greetings. Happy Thursday. Thanks for tuning in here today. To all of you, welcome aboard. I am Steve Deace. Wore my name badge today. Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre, they are here with me as well. If you would like to be here with us, I'm assuming you are right now, but if you would like to connect with us, several different ways to do so. Steve at stevedeace.com. That's how you can email the program. DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. Again, all those things are minute by minute, whether we are on those platforms. You can like us on our new MeWe page. That page is blowing up right now. MeWe.com. That is the free speech alternative to Facebook. Just look for Steve Deace there. Still trying to get past one follower on Clout Hub, which is a free speech alternative to Twitter. Have you guys gotten accounts on there yet, by any chance?
No.
Okay. All right. I'm just wondering if it's just. Am I already kidding?
Trying to get some clout on Clout Hub?
Yes. I'm already shadow banned on the free speech alternatives. They're like, man, that guy's good. Can't let that guy on the platform. We're trying to establish a business here. All right. Like preemptive shadow bans. That's tremendous news. Where else? YouTube.com/Steve Deace. And then Rumble is the free speech alternative to YouTube at rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. All right, coming up here on a Thursday, end of this program, final segment, our good friend Josh Hammer, former clerk on the U.S. Court of Appeals, smart dude. He's now the op-ed page editor at Newsweek. He is going to join us about what is happening right now in Congress and then also the future of Donald Trump and his movement. We will have that conversation a little bit later on. Also, we're going to continue on with Theology Thursday. We are going to continue our look. I got a call yesterday from a friend of mine who works in PR. And he's just like, dude. I'm reading a Nefarious Plot right now. And I have to tell you, this thing is expertly written. And I have to put it down like after every few pages. I'm just like, I can't handle it, man. I mean, it is so much what is going on right now. And it hits so close to home. It don't take any offense at this, Steve. It's a painful read for me, he said.
Yeah, I had to go through the death chapter today to prepare. I was disgusted. So well done, but I was disgusted.
Yeah, we're going to continue our Theology Thursday look back at a Nefarious Plot. I've got a call today with the folks over at Believe Entertainment, get an update on how the script is proceeding as we hope to begin filming that movie next year. I believe when we were just joking amongst us privately about who could play Lord Nefarious, and especially because I know how we're going to bring Lord Nefarious to the screen, and you guys don't yet. Since I know how we're going to bring Lord Nefarious to the screen, this individual would even be it would fit him even better than when we thought about it a year ago. But one of the names we discussed privately was Matthew McConaughey. Obviously, that's no way we have any shot of doing that.
I think we do.
We might.
I think we do.
We might. I mean, they're trying to cancel him as we speak, and as far as I'm concerned, listen, everybody else is going for theirs, so I got to go for mine, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, McConaughey's won his Oscars, his Emmys, his Golden Globes. He's made his money, right? Here's hoping they go ahead and successfully cancel him for daring to talk to people he doesn't agree with, right? Okay, because that's why they're trying to cancel him, right? He's like literally having conversations with people he doesn't agree with to see if they can find some common ground, and for that. For trying to be American, he is being canceled as we speak. Here's hoping they are, to be honest, I'm hoping they're successfully going to cancel him because whatever my odds are.
Need some work, Matthew?
Yeah, whatever those odds are, they might go from -47 to -12. But you're telling me there's a chance, right? So we'll continue our look back at a Nefarious Plot. Yes. I'll share the link here a little bit. Those of you that want autographed copies of its sequel book that's out now, A Nefarious Carol, we are restocking the signed autographed copies through Premier Collectibles. So not only can you get an autographed copy, courtesy of yours truly, but you can bypass the Amazon industrial complex if you choose to do so by getting it directly from Premier Collectibles. I'll be sharing that link a little bit later on my social media, so stay tuned for that. Nefarious Carol is out now, the sequel to A Nefarious Plot we'll talk about for Theology Thursday next hour. At the bottom of this hour, we haven't done this yet in 2021. We'll take a little bit of a break from the decline and fall of Western civilization for 3 non-political questions. But before we get to all of that, of course, Aaron must give us a rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away brought to you by impeachment number 2. President Donald Trump became the first American president to ever be impeached twice yesterday as the U.S. House of Representatives voted to impeach Trump 232 to 197. 10 Republicans joined all Democrats in support of impeachment. Both sides got their sound bites in.
He summons and dispatches mob to kidnap and hurt many of us. He is unfit to hold office. He summons and dispatches mob to assassinate Vice President Pence, to assassinate Speaker Pelosi.
Some have cited the metaphor that the president lit the flame. Well, they lit actual flames, actual fires, and we put them out.
Expired. There will be order in the House.
I yield back.
This president has spent 4 years abusing his power, lying, embracing authoritarianism, radicalizing his supporters.
And last night, President Trump reacted.
Mob violence goes against everything I believe in and everything our movement stands for. No true supporter of mine could ever endorse political violence. No true supporter of mine could ever disrespect law enforcement or our great American flag.
Mitch McConnell said last night there's no time for a trial in the Senate before Joe Biden is sworn in as president, so who knows what'll happen there. Incoming Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene made this announcement last night.
I would like to announce on behalf of the American people, we have to make sure that our leaders are held accountable. We cannot have a president of the United States that is willing to abuse the power of the office of the presidency and be easily bought off by foreign governments, foreign Chinese energy companies, Ukrainian energy companies. So on January 21st, I will be filing articles of impeachment on Joe Biden.
Jake Tapper of CNN has gone full arsonist mode.
Congressman Brian Mast, a Republican from Florida, who lost his legs, by the way, fighting for democracy abroad. Although I don't know about his commitment to it here in the United States.
Speaking of rhetorical arson.
If you voted for Trump, you voted for the person who the Klan supported. You voted for the person who Nazis support. You voted for the person who the alt-right supports.
According to the Washington Post, Facebook played a larger role in pre-planning last week's events than the company originally suggested. Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg sought early on to deflect blame to smaller companies like the now deplatformed Parler. BuzzFeed is setting new standards for journalism with this story. Capitol Police officers say they wouldn't be surprised if members of Congress helped plan the attack. Learning Chinese today, today's phrase is, I wouldn't be surprised if Hunter Biden is smoking crack right now.
如果 Hunter Biden 现在正在抽烟，我不会感到惊讶。
In Texas, an election official who was exposed in a Project Veritas sting has been arrested for widespread vote harvesting and fraud. Learning the dark tongue of Mordor today, today's phrase is, election officials nationwide find no fraud. So to sum all this up for you, Trump was impeached for a second time yesterday for inciting a riot that was pre-planned on social media, but not exclusively on the now deplatformed Parler, stemming from concerns about voter fraud, of which we were told there was none, but that a woman got arrested for yesterday. Sounds about right. And finally this from comedian Ryan Long.
My name is Dave. And I'm Wayne. And together we are a gay inter-radical political protester couple.
At first our political differences were kind of hot, but lately it's just become too much.
Oh, very funny. money. Oh, and what you've been doing all lockdown hasn't been. On paper, we do have the same interests. We both love costumes, marching, wrecking property. We both have bad tattoos, like my flaming American Eagle back piece. Yeah, I'm thinking of getting a stick and poke of a bottle of beer. We both think there was election fraud. We just disagree on which election. What are you doing?
Just looking for a few more votes. They're here somewhere.
Let it go.
You let Russia go.
I think he was agitating in my protest.
I think he was agitating at my protest.
And that's what happened while we were away.
That is some solid gold right there. Learning Chinese today. I wouldn't be surprised if Hunter Biden was smoking crack right now.
That's what my sources are telling me.
No.
They wouldn't be surprised. That's what counts for journalism now.
Oh my gosh.
Jake Tapper is Gollum right now. He's losing his mind in real time.
Yes, he used to be Schmeagol. Remember when we all thought he was the Schmeagol a few years ago?
No, I didn't remember. I've been way ahead of the curve on this.
You hated him the whole time.
Yeah. Thank you. I want that on the record.
That's what we do now. We vie. We vie to predict who we were right to hate first. No, I hated that dude before you did, man. Get out of here. You were still giving him the benefit of the doubt, schmuck. Aaron's Montage brought to you by our friends over at Bonner Private Wine. I tried some of this wine. Frankly, after watching that, I feel like trying some more. Okay. I tried a bottle of this. I don't know, like the wine terminology, man. I'm sorry. I went to community college. I don't know. Yeah, I'm from Iowa. It was like a Pumana 2016 or something like that. Here's all I can tell you. Buddy of mine was in town from DC. We watched the national championship game together Monday night. And we each had a glass of wine for dinner. Amy made cavatelli. And we put that entire bottle of wine down over the next few hours. That's how good it was.
Oh, Have you tried
it yet?
I'm almost done with the bottle.
Yeah, I had some last night.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah.
So keep it coming.
It is really good. It's done at extreme altitude in Argentina, remote vineyards at 9,000 feet. Now, I don't know what any of that means, but apparently if you like wine, you're supposed to, okay? Here's what I can tell you. It's the first time in my entire life I put down an entire bottle of wine with a buddy. Just kicking back, watching the game and having dinner. That's how good it was. All right. No inflated prices. You're getting top quality foreign wine for about half of the price. And the best part is the flavor: blackberry, leather, smoke, dark cherry. Head over to patriotwine2021.com. Get 50% off your shipping today if you're one of our listeners and viewers here at the Steve Deace Show at patriotwine2021.com. Again, patriotwine2021.com. In the overtime today, we're going to discuss a poll question. In fact, I got to check on what the latest results of this are. I asked last night, and wait till I tell you, this was the last thing I tweeted before I turned everything off last night. And then I'm going to tell you what I did with my evening. You're good, okay? Because we were talking about it before we went on the air. I tweeted out, what ends first? Democrats impeaching Trump or the masks? Like, which of these, essentially what I'm asking, it's which of these psychoses, which of these cults will exhaust themselves, all right, first, okay? And 70% of you think Democrats will stop impeaching Trump before the masks go away. 30% think it's the masks. We're to discuss why I asked this question and how each of us would answer coming up today in the overtime. And it's a great time to become a Blaze TV subscriber. It's our biggest discount ever. We did this last year. We're renewing it now because who knows with the state of big tech and social media, how much longer you're going to be able to get our content via any other means except directly through us. All right, so go to blazetv.com/Deace. Get $30 off an annual subscription to Blaze TV right now. BlazeTV.com/Deace. That's where you will be able to watch the overtime later today. We record it. It's not broadcast live. We record it after the show, and then it's uploaded on demand for your download later on in the day. That's where you can go to watch the overtime and where you can go to subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber to Blaze TV. Get our biggest discount ever again. $30 off an annual subscription today at BlazeTV.com/Deace. So after I tweeted out this poll question last night, I turned off a lot of this noise. And there's so many accusations now. Everything's Hitler now. Everything is. All right? I mean, Godwin's law right now is that sooner or later every argument devolves into a Hitler reference. We have done to Godwin's law now what we just in the last 3 days what we have been doing to the Constitution for like the last 30 years, right? It's a dead letter now. Godwin's law, what is it? It doesn't exist. All right, we start now with Hitler arguments. So I wanted to put this noise away. I was a big World War II buff when I was younger, but it's been a while since I've delved into those waters. And I found a documentary on Amazon.com. I've watched the first few episodes. It was done by, it was a British documentary, and it is very British, okay? In that it's beautiful to look at, and the pacing is very laborious, okay? And it takes itself way too seriously. I mean, it couldn't be more British, right? And I'm watching this, though, because it has some fascinating file footage of the era that led to the rise of Hitler, Hitler's life himself and family I've never seen before. It's told in one of the most slow-footed ways you could possibly do it. In other words, Peter Jackson or Ken Burns didn't do this documentary, okay? But I just wanted to see again what were cultural conditions and everything like that led to a lot of this, that led to his rise. And what was his background, more of it. And it's a fascinating watch. And if I could find anything at all that's a parallel to the time we are in right now, Prussia, Germany, I mean, some of the oldest talkie movie footage we have in the history of the world comes from Germany in this era at the turn of the 20th century, like 1903, 1904. I mean, they've got cable cars going through town. The architecture is way beyond what probably existed in most of America at that time. I mean, this looks like this looks like a culture on the cutting edge. All right. I mean, Bismarck could be maybe the most respected geopolitical figure in Western civilization at this time. And so how do you go from, this is the time period that Hitler is born into in 1885. How do you go from this to 1924 is when he's launching his first coup attempt at the German government, right? How does that happen? And that's less than 30 years, you know? And if I could find any parallel between that time and now, because if you look at a lot of the structured nuts and bolts of America, this looks like we're on the cutting edge of society in our day and age. It looks like, I mean, we gave the world the internet, we gave the world the microchip, we gave the world the television, the radio, electricity indoors, indoor plumbing, the automobile, the assembly line, right? Okay. Weapons of mass destruction. If I could see any parallel into how a culture that was on the cutting edge of modernity, as Germany was at the turn of the 20th century, to one that then gave birth to such a vile, demonic figure, it would be that long before Hitler arose, I should say, the culture gave up on ultimate truth. It kind of gave up on, it was so divided from a sectarian standpoint that the narrative that promoted the particular sectarian group that you identified with was more important than what the facts were. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I could find any parallel to that time, based on what I watched last night, to what we're immersed in today, it would be that. And I bring this up because I want to reset this, even though it's probably not good for my career to do so. But I'm doing it for a reason, okay? Aaron, did you vote for Donald Trump twice?
No.
Okay. Did you vote for him once?
Yes.
All right. I don't think I've even asked you if you voted for him this time. Okay. Do you consider yourself like a fan of Donald Trump?
No.
Do you like his brand?
Not really.
Not really. You're not. So you don't think that you're not somebody that's out, to go to a rally, watch a speech.
No.
You're not following what he does and says. Well, when he used to be on Twitter, you're not into that stuff all the time.
Nope.
No, you're not. Okay. Todd, how about you? Same questions to you.
All the same answers.
All the same answers. I have all the same answers too. I got to tell you, I know he's getting credited for it. I thought his speeches that he put out yesterday looked weak. I did. I thought they looked like I thought they were a not so subtle plea. Please don't impeach me a second time. Don't hurt my feelings. I thought it looked weak. But I'm not either. Now, the three of us, I'm the only one that's ever known the individual. I kind of gave up being a fan of Trump's brand somewhere around Valentine's Day of 2016, being on the Cruz campaign. I didn't vote for him the first time, and don't regret my decision at all, and stood by it the entire time. Did vote for him this time. Don't regret my decision at all. Stand by it now. Can't bring myself to watch a rally. I'm not into the Trump brand. I don't get this whole idea of yesterday. The story was Jared Kushner stopped Donald Trump from going to Gab or Clout Hub once he got banned from Twitter. Dude, that's so beta. I mean, come on, man. I built myself a multi-billion-dollar empire. I'm the friggin' president of the United States. And my needle-nosed Buck-O-5 son-in-law, who ought to feel like thus speaketh Zarathustra, that he gets to be in my blanking presence, man. That he ought to be on his knees daily, thanking his creator he got to impregnate my daughter. And he steps to me to tell me what platforms I'm going to go to and I'm going to talk to. Get the bleep out of here with that. Is there anything more beta than that? Yet we hear this and see this in Trump world all the time, right? Well, he got bad advice, so that's why he made this stupid decision. I mean, it's like on one hand, the same people that want you to believe this is the savior of Western civilization. Then when they do something wrong or stupid, it's always that he was given bad advice or somebody else made this mistake, like he's powerless at the same time. Right. Well, then what's the point of how then the election can't be as important as we thought it was when we voted for him if he's powerless to do anything once he's there, right? Pick one of these narratives. See where I'm going with this? Okay. Of course. Now, why do I reset all of this? Because for the life of me, I have no idea what this is about. I don't know. I have no idea why they're impeaching him. I don't know. I mean, the only reason I can come up with is because he's Donald Trump and they hate you. I don't know another reason. I can't come up with a valid one. At least we had a Ukrainian phone call and quid pro quo. And that was dumb. I don't know what this is about. Now, of course, I know why Democrats are doing what they're doing. Because he is Donald Trump and they hate you. I know that. But I don't know. So I know what the real reason is. I just don't know what the right reason is supposed to be, right? And for the life of me, I don't understand, including people I love and I'm friends with, anybody's wasting any of their political capital with an R after their name, lending this any credibility, credence on any level whatsoever. I don't know what the win is. Well, I'm standing for a principle. What is the principle? I can't get an answer. The principle that people don't like Donald Trump. Well, we had an election. A lot of people, no matter how honest you think the election was, there sure as hell were a lot of people that voted against him, no matter how honest it was or wasn't, right? Let's put it this way. I don't think that he legitimately lost. I don't think that. And has nothing to do with Rudy Giuliani or Sidney Powell or any of that. I do math. Math doesn't work for me. And no one's presented me an alternative other than he's just that uniquely popular that proves to me that my math is wrong. So I'm going to need better than that, especially when we're arresting people for ballot harvesting in Texas yesterday, right? I'm going to need more than that. That notwithstanding, though, you cannot deny, unless you're just a complete Trump Kool-Aid drinker, that a lot more people voted against him than should have, given the peace treaties that have been signed, the economic growth that we had. You see what, right?
Yeah.
That's undeniable. And Joe Biden and Fulton County and Washtenaw County and Wayne County, Michigan didn't make people do that. Trump did. He's not a victim.
Right.
He made those decisions. So with all those, with 4 minutes of disclaimers out there, I'm here to tell you this morning, I have no idea what principle is being argued about here by the Republicans. I don't know what this is about. I don't know what there is to gain. And I've done this many times in my career. I did it in 2016 when I didn't support Trump. Was that good for the growth of this show, do you think? No, it was not. I'll answer that for you. It wasn't. Which is why I wasn't sure my contract was going to get renewed, which is why I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Truth Bombs, because that was with the anticipation that this might be my last run around the track. We had all those conversations 4 years ago, did we not?
We did.
Yes. That was not good for my career to do that. So I'm totally fine doing what I think is right, regardless of whether you all out there listening and watching me right now will like it or not. I don't understand what the doing what's right is. That's what I don't understand. Doing what? What did he do? I don't know. To me, as this goes on now, it looks like this was really in the end, nothing. The ultimate goal here was just to get rid of Parler because it was a legitimate, it had legitimately intruded upon big tech's monopoly on the dissemination of information. That's what it looks like to me. Prove me wrong. Tell me what the principle is here. Josh Hammer's going to be on with us later. I'm just going to ask him. I'm asking people I know. I can't get answers. I would like to know, what is the principle? I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. So, okay, what's the number? 50,000, 100,000 people? A large gathering of people were there on January the 6th, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say 50,000. I think it was more than that, but we'll just go. We'll estimate low. 50,000 people show up. Of that 50,000, 50, 100, 200. Let's estimate higher than the number was. 500. 500 storm in there. Now, maybe there's videos of them being let in, but we'll even go with the narrative. I'll even go with the narrative. 500 storm into the Capitol. Among that 500, a group grabs a flagpole and beats a cop to death with it. They should all be given the gas chamber in 10 minutes for that.
True.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if that doesn't happen, and Trump says all the same things he said about the election for the last 2 months, and says everything to the group when he addressed it that he said on January the 6th, if that doesn't happen, 500 people at max, and I'm overblowing that number, 500 people out of a low estimate of 15,000, okay? If that doesn't happen, are we doing this today?
No.
Okay, then what's the message then?
Violence is icky.
Okay.
On the right.
So apparently the message is that we move heaven and earth when we feel threatened in our backyard. But while your businesses and everything else are being burnt down the entire summer, we can't be bothered. And when you asked Congress for months to get relief for that, Nancy Pelosi, as Leslie Stahl pointed out on 60 Minutes, could not be moved to help you and your family and your business since what, April? And then that ran out in June and they never did anything else because she didn't want anything else being done. So they couldn't mobilize to help you when the lawlessness was at your small business. By the way, your small business isn't any less sacred. Your family business, your home, your neighborhood isn't any less sacred than the Capitol. We're not statists. Breaking the glass of the Capitol is every bit as bad as shattering the windows of your home and business, and vice versa. And if you think, by the way, that this is how you're going to send some message to people not to do this in the future, while you continue to deny all their freedoms and liberties and rights at the exact same time, you are cultivating this. That's the other thing I could take from watching the first couple of chapters of the Hitler documentary last night. You're making decisions to cultivate this form of nefarious element in your own society, especially after they watch a two-tier justice system where one group does it in one ideology's name and they get decals on almost every NFL team's helmets for the last 4 months. Another group does it, and we have to send a clear message to you. Well, why wasn't a clear message sent to both groups then? I don't understand this. It makes no sense to me. I don't get the arguments. More in a moment. Just had Built Bar time during the break. One of the few good things. We learned a lot of new things in 2020. Most of them were not good new things. But one of the few new good things we learned in 2020 was about Built Bar. And this is the time of year, of course, with resolutions and promises to do better, particularly when it comes to the health side, eating healthier food. But then when you realize that the taste and enjoyment of eating you have to sacrifice to do that, the resolve weekends, you don't have to make that sacrifice with Built Bar. You have had candy bars that are not this good. It is the best protein bar you have ever had. I promise you. Well over 20 flavors, all of them covered in real chocolate. They just launched a white chocolate line recently as well. The white chocolate sea salt caramel is absolutely incredible. All of these flavors are good. And unique stuff too. I mean, I just had a pumpkin spice chocolate chip cookie, Built Bar. There's cookies and cream. Anything that you're looking for. They just launched a cookie dough one I've not tried yet, but other people have and are giving it rave reviews. Less than 160 calories or less, I should say. 160 calories or less in every bar. 5 grams of sugar or less in every bar. 5 carbs or less in every bar. Up to 20 grams of protein in every bar. Best one you've ever had. Give it a shot right now. 20% off your first order at Built Bar, BUILT, BuiltBar.com when you use the promo code DACE at the website. Built Bar, BUILT, BuiltBar.com, promo code DACE. Let's get to 3 non-political questions.
We all have questions.
Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Who am I? A search and a question of identity. Why am I here? A question of meaning and purpose. Where am I going? Question of destiny.
Some better than others.
What sort of morality or proto-morality would you expect to find in a chimpanzee troop?
Injecting some levity into the demise of Western civilization. It's 3 questions on the Steve Deace Show.
Yes, 3 awesome questions from the best producer on the face of the planet. 3 awesome questions with me, Aaron. Question number 1, what are the top 2 NFL playoff performances in your memory? It can be either an individual or a unit.
So we're talking playoff games, not counting the Super Bowl, correct?
You can count the Super Bowl.
You can count the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And are you talking individual players or just
individuals or units?
You want to? I'll do one and then I'll let you go and then I'll pick another one. Okay. The first one I'm going to pick for me is Doug Williams. I mean, he was getting asked questions. The infamous question he got at Super Bowl media day that year. How long have you been a black quarterback? Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. People forget he was not the Redskins starting quarterback that year. Jay Schrader was. I can't remember if Jay Schrader got hurt or got benched, and then Doug Williams was put in. His running back that year was a guy named Timmy Smith, who ran for 200 yards in the Super Bowl, but then was like never hurt. He's like the strawberry alarm clock of Super Bowl running backs. I mean, it just was an incredible story. The way that he broke through, the trailblazing that he accomplished, but the dignity that he carried himself with as well. And then he was just the best player on the field that day. So I'm going to go with Doug Williams first, and then I'll let you go. Because I've now got a list of like 30 of them in my head that I have to choose from for my second.
Well, I think you got to go with John Elway and the drive. I mean,
against the Browns,
it's just and those
99 yards, wasn't it, in the old dog pound? Yeah,
and 2 seasons in a row, right? Was it before or after with Ernest Biner and the fumble?
It was 2 years. It was, and then he did it. Ernest Biner fumbled that year, and then he did it again in the AFC Championship game the next year in Denver.
I mean, those are glorious matchups between those two. But I mean, the drive is. I mean, it can't take second place to anything. I mean, it is the quintessential example of, fourth quarter all the chips are against you, back against the wall. What do you do? And 99 yards.
I could also go with the game that made me a football fan. My first favorite team was the old Oakland Raiders. I've talked about this before. I loved Jim Plunkett. First game I ever remember watching was Super Bowl 15. The Raiders against the Eagles, and the Raiders were the first wild card team to win the Super Bowl. And I just thought I thought I could grow up and be like that. I mean, this guy, Jim, now I didn't know, I was 6. I didn't know that like Plunkett had actually won like the Heisman Trophy in college and was the number 1 like overall pick in the draft and was expected to have been a great player earlier in his career. I just knew he was a cast-off, right? You know? And I'm looking at a guy that's with a single bar helmet, a third chin, and I'm thinking, I think I could look like that when I grow up. You know what I'm saying? Like now you look at some of the quarterbacks today, they're 6'4", 6'5", 230, 240 pounds. You're like, I'm probably not going to grow up and look like that, right? I thought I could grow up and look like Jim Plunkett.
I love those pictures of like Blanda and Len Dawson at halftime smoking heaters. It's fantastic.
Yes. I should pick that game because it's what made me a football fan. That game is. But I'm going to give an honorable mention and cheat because he only asked for 2. But I had to throw that one in there. I'm going to go with the Kellen Winslow game.
Yeah.
Because it's maybe the only time I can think of in NFL history that a tight end like is considered the guy who won the game. Not like made the game winning catch. Like there've been a lot of great tight ends, right? Okay. But like literally a tight end took the game over. And the famous clip, that was the divisional playoffs, the Chargers and the Dolphins. And it's the famous clip where he's getting carried off the field with IVs and
because
stuff.
In people's memories, it's like the Jordan flu game.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. So I'm going to go with that as my second game.
How did you phrase the question, Aaron?
So the top 2 playoff performances, and it can be either a unit, so not a whole team, a unit, or an individual player.
As a unit, still... I mean, and I'm a Packers fan saying this, but the gold standard for the best team ever is the Chicago Bears in 1985. Bears. I mean, they just went in and, took the Patriots by the scruff of the neck and it was like the Hulk and Loki just smashing him into the ground. It was, I mean, the Super Bowl shuffle. I mean, pop culture now, look what it runs off and does all kinds of, they were just an absolute cult of personality. I still remember a clip of the refrigerator getting a ball at running back. We had a middle linebacker
Trivia
named
question: the fridge scored a touchdown in that Super Bowl, and Walter Payton did not.
But we had a middle linebacker named George Cumby. Just decleated him. I mean, they were. No one has matched them.
They went viral.
Then.
We didn't even know what that term meant back then, but with the Super Bowl shuffle and everything else, Jim McMahon with the headbands. I mean, they were. It's kind of part and parcel of what we are used to seeing nowadays, But in 1985, we had not seen anything like this, and it just blew people away. Yeah, that's a good answer, obviously. Yeah.
I think for me, it's 2009 Kurt Warner wild card round against the Packers. Just basically put that team on his back. And of course, this was towards the end of his career, kind of Tom Brady-esque a little bit. Just went off, and they ended up winning that game in overtime, and then went on to the Super Bowl where they lost. But I thought that was one great performance from Kurt Warner. And then
that feels like some shade.
It's not. I didn't mean for it to be shade. And then I think the other one is the 2016. I know. 2016 Denver Broncos, really the whole year, but especially in the Super Bowl, because especially at that point in the season, I mean, Peyton Manning was just...
Pitcher had a rubber arm, man.
Yeah. He couldn't do anything. So, I mean, they basically won that Super Bowl for the team. So those are my 2. Question number 2. If there was somebody, one person who you knew who is now dead, that you could ask for one piece of advice from right now, who would that person be, and what would you ask them?
I think I would ask, wow, that is an incredibly good question. I think I would ask. I think I would ask St. Paul, because he's the only writer I can think of. Yeah, now I think about it, he's the only one. He's the only writer of the Bible that enjoyed some form of free citizenship that came with proto versions of the civil liberties that Americans are granted by birth today. And I would love to know. I mean, I have my own read of this, and I'm confident in it. Otherwise, if I didn't think my read was right, I wouldn't have this read, right? But I'd really like to know what the guy who actually wrote the words of Romans 13, what he would say about navigating that, navigating those converging paths with your faith in a free we are much freer than ancient Rome was, but first century Rome was arguably the freest society humanity had seen, at least in the West, in history at that point. And he was granted that citizenship as a Jew, which made him, so here he's a Jew preaching a controversial gospel to other Jews that Yeshua of Nazareth was their long-awaited Messiah. And he's at the same time, he's a Roman citizen that is granted freedom that the vast majority of Jews, regardless of where they came down on the Yeshua question, could never even sniff or smell, right? He's uniquely qualified to answer and address the dilemmas we are facing today. And then the idea of Romans 13 and honoring the king, how is that applied when there is no king and in our country the people rule as opposed to the government? Does that mean that the government is to honor us? See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
How would he exegetically work that out for the times in which we live? I think that's what I would do, because it selfishly speaks to the intersection of both where my career is but also where our citizenship is right now as Americans at the same time.
I would ask Abraham Lincoln, are we still the last best hope? And thus, is it still worth preserving this union?
That's a good one. So
I see the poll: 25% of Americans think national divorce is a good idea. Some form of national divorce. You guys see that?
I did not.
This week?
25%.
Yikes!
Insane.
I think with me, because I originally formulated this question as somebody you knew who is now dead. So I'll answer it that way.
Oh, somebody you knew?
Yeah.
Oh, I just said
that's okay. No, okay. Those answers were fine.
Okay.
No, those answers were great. No, those are super good answers. I would say probably my grandma McIntyre, because she grew up during both World Wars. She was very young during World War I. But obviously through the Great Depression and World War II. She would have been a young adult. Actually, no, she would have been a full-on adult at World War II time. Is this the most difficult time this country has faced? If not, how did you handle yourself during those other times? That would be the piece of advice I would ask. Question number 3. If you were the showrunner for The Mandalorian, where would you take the story next?
I would use Mando as the MacGuffin to fill in and canonize the content of the period of time between Return of the Jedi and the prequel series that it looks like they may end up just eventually just memory holing. Okay, by the time we get done with it. But that's what I would do. And so many great books. Lucas, the first series that he ever okayed to write about a post-Return of the Jedi world was the Timothy Zahn Heir to the Empire books that introduced Admiral Thrawn. That was a little bit before Aaron was born, when we were in high school. I think those books came out, and they were all huge New York Times bestsellers, and they're like in their own class now, that all of that content is. I think they call it the Legends category or something.
Are they good?
The Timothy Zahn books are phenomenal. Yeah.
Legitimately
phenomenal.
They're not just Star Wars geeky good.
No,
okay.
I thought they were phenomenal. I loved them. But that's all considered like legends now. I would use Mando as the MacGuffin, and you can see there's already been elements of that in how they've done things, right? Correcting the wrongs or correcting the wrongs and filling in the blanks that would put this back on solid footing for its fans.
That's the only correct answer. I mean, that's what he should all along. His purpose is to be the MacGuffin. And my concern with the beginning of season 2, while those episodes weren't bad, is that it was just going to be like the Legends of Mando. He's
just going to walk the earth.
No, yeah, I
like
don't.
Kung Fu.
No.
Yeah.
And keep pushing the envelope to the point where they just have to say, you know what, Rey isn't canon anymore, because it's ridiculous.
Star Wars Jedi Knight Outcast. No, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. My favorite Star Wars video game of all time. Maybe behind the original Battlefront 2. Follows Kyle Katarn. He's former Force sensitive, or former Jedi actually, who abandons the Force and then goes back to just basically being a mercenary. He stumbles on one of his missions where he's a mercenary for the New Republic. He stumbles upon, lo and behold, a facility where they're essentially developing this material to artificially infuse soldiers with the Force. That kind of mirrors what's already happening in The Mandalorian. So I would basically follow that story arc. Maybe even turn Mando into a Force-sensitive or Jedi-light type person.
All right, when we come back, Theology Thursday, we are going to go there again, back into the pages of a nefarious plot, which is essentially ripped from the headlines, except it was written 5 years ago. Stay tuned. And we're back again with Hour 2, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here, alongside Todd and Aaron McIntyre, and all of you. Our good friend Josh Hammer, op-ed page editor at Newsweek, will be joining us here at the bottom of the hour. If you want to let us know what you think about what we think, email the program, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. Over on MeWe, which is the Facebook alternative. Just look for Steve Deace there. We are attempting to start a Clout Hub page, but now I can't get into their website like I couldn't get into Gab. So the good news, this means that these new Twitter alternatives with Parler gone. The good news is, and yesterday Parler's CEO said he wasn't sure they were ever going to come back, by the way. I hope that's not true. But the good news is with these Twitter alternatives is it's clear they can't handle the traffic because they're blowing up, right? Mm-hmm. And the bad news is that they can't handle the traffic. So, but if you can get into Cloud Hub, good luck to you. Look for Steve Deace there. I just tried. I could not get in. We've got samples of this show that you can watch for free and then share with others over on YouTube at youtube.com/Steve Deace and on Rumble. That's the YouTube alternative. Look for rumble.com at rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. Also, we're going to get into Theology Thursday here in a moment as we go back through my book, A Nefarious Plot. It is still sold out at Amazon.com. You can get the Audible and Kindle versions. More books are on their way, though, if you don't have your copy of A Nefarious Plot, which we will be turning into a movie later this year. You can get your copy of the sequel. We just replenished the inventory at Amazon of the sequel book, A Nefarious Carol, where now that Lord Nefarious has successfully taken down America, the devil now wants to use America as the launching pad for the final stage of his dominionist master plan. But for that to happen, he needs a mate. And one evening at Christmas time, he comes upon a young woman running away from a dysfunctional Christian home and also a drug-dealing, abusive boyfriend, thinking that she could be vulnerable to his advances, because for the ritual to be successful, he cannot impose on her, he cannot assault her, he can't lie to her. He has to legitimately woo her to become his disciple of her own free will. And in A Nefarious Carol, you read through the conversation that the two of them have one evening in that motel room, which is a lot of the conversations that are going on in our own hearts in our culture today. So get your copy of A Nefarious Carol, the Audible version. I read this one along with my oldest daughter, Anastasia. She reads the part of the heroine in the book, Rey, which again is not named after the Star Wars Rey, different spelling. It's named after a tradition of middle names for the women on my mom's side of the family. My grandmother, great-grandmother had that name. So that's where the name Rey comes from. So you can get your copy of A Nefarious Carol at Amazon.com right now, as well as at Audible.com. And a lot of you have done that already. I mean, we have sold thousands of copies of that book, so thank you very much. And keep those 5-star reviews coming at Amazon. It helps us to sell even more and get a very important story out into the hands of as many people as we can. And PremierCollectibles.com, just like it sounds. Go to PremierCollectibles.com if you don't want to do business with the Amazon industrial complex. Don't blame you. Go to PremierCollectibles.com, search for A Nefarious Carol. You should be able to order now. We're going to resubmit with them the autographed copies of the book. We sold out of those right before Christmas in no time. We're going to do another run of autographed copies of A Nefarious Carol via PremierCollectibles.com. All right, let's get to Theology Thursday, brought to you by Annie's Kit Club. I mean, we're looking at a winter with maybe more and more lockdowns. If not lockdowns, how about without lockdowns, it's weather. Like my son today had his basketball game canceled because we've got winter storm warnings, and it's for up north, but maybe it gets here overnight. We're not really sure. Now they're not sure they can do the practice in the morning, and then you as a parent, you're thinking about, man, how do we keep them busy? And we don't want them just playing video games the entire time, right? If you're a homeschooling family, as we were and still are, our youngest daughter is still being homeschooled. Noah's the only one that's actually been in a schoolhouse. I think Annie's Kit Club and this kind of stuff that we're going to talk about here for a minute is right up your alley. All right. So whether it's it's the perfect subscription box for both boys or girls, they've got the Young Woodworkers Kit Club. Maybe Aaron's parents got him that. That's why he builds end tables on holiday weekends. He calls that fun. It's a monthly subscription that puts real tools into the hands of your children, starting with a great kid-sized hammer. Every month, your child receives an all-in-one woodworking kit with the materials and the tools needed to make an awesome project with minimal supervision. They do the same thing with the girls as well. 2 fun craft projects every month, complete with easy-to-follow instructions. You can kickstart her creativity through painting, beading, and more, and have your kids develop actual skills, mastering real world building or new crafting techniques while expressing their creativity. So you want to make a great gift? Go to Annie's Kit Club, Kit Clubs, I should say, plural, Annie'sKitClubs.com/Steve. Annie'sKitClubs.com/Steve. Save 75% off your first shipment. 75% off your first one at Annie'sKitClubs.com/Steve. Well, let's continue. Let's step into the Twilight Zone, as one of my favorite songs of the 80s once sang, as we continue looking at A Nefarious Plot. We are winding down now Lord Nefarious in each chapter, laying out the pillars of his plan. And this week, we look at how he brought death as a mainstream rallying point, something to strive for in American culture, Todd.
This is, as I said earlier in the show, just a terrible, heinous chapter, which means Steve did his job. It focuses on abortion and euthanasia with specific cases. Terry Schiavo, Kermit Gosnell. And with Gosnell in particular.
For those that don't remember, Terry Schiavo 20 years ago was the woman that they starved to death in Florida. Yeah.
And he paints the picture of nothing short of a Holocaust in Kermit Gosnell's den of death. And those continue to exist everywhere we go, even if they're a little cleaner. That's what they are. And yet, since Steve wrote this book, the nations of Ireland, ostensibly the most Catholic nation in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And just recently, Argentina having...
Isn't that the country the Pope is from, I believe,
yes,
correct? Yeah.
Pope, these cosmic orgies of indulgence in making abortion legal in their land. So not only have we not learned anything from those examples, we stepped on the gas. And it's why at the very end of this chapter, Nefarious says, quote, "My work here is almost done." So most times in chapters, I kind of riff. I try to go into my own a little analysis, but I like I said, I've read this book multiple times because I helped Steve edit it. I know what's there. It is truly disgusting. So I wrote down 7 quotes, and I'm just going to read back to you and let you run with them, because that's the best way to serve this, I think. Number 1, you believe that life has no greater meaning other than the avoidance of suffering. What does that have to do with abortion and euthanasia?
Because that's what Planned Parenthoods, I don't know if they still use this line, but for many years, one of their key talking points was to say, make every child a wanted child.
Yes.
Okay. A couple of years ago, I think it was Iceland was given credit. I think it was CBS News did the story a couple of years ago that Iceland was given credit for, how'd they word it? Getting rid of Down syndrome, right? No, they didn't. They just killed the children that they were able to diagnose with it prenatally.
So if their life isn't about you and your happiness, it isn't really a life.
That's right. If the life isn't in service to whoever is going to bring it forth, or the community or the world, or if we know going in that it will experience some kind of suffering or not be born into the most ideal of conditions, then that life doesn't have value. And then you even rationalize it that you have committed an act of great mercy. And I don't want to, no spoilers for the sequel of A Nefarious Carol, but this is one of the key conversations that will go on between the devil and Ray in that book. Is the devil's going to take the ideology that Lord Nefarious articulates in this chapter, and he is going to apply it to choices that Ray has made in her own life. And he's going to spin it 180 degrees different. He's going to make it sound like by Ray making these choices, she should not be ashamed, but she should instead celebrate, shout your abortion, as we've been told, celebrate these things, because this, by doing so, by not bringing in a child into a world where it would suffer like this, she did something that God does not do, the devil says in a Nefarious Carol. She acted to avoid suffering. And see, what we do is we assume when there's suffering in the world, our immediate reaction is to do what? How could God allow this suffering?
Sure.
I'm sure there's plenty of times. Yesterday was my mom's 63rd birthday. I'm sure there were plenty of times after she found out at Christmas, when she's 14 years old. Think of what you and I were doing when we were 14 years old at Christmas.
I right now have a 13-year-old daughter.
So you're not that far away. Can't even fathom what I'm about to say next. Well, my mom found out she was pregnant with me. That's what she found out. How many times do you think she asked herself, how could God allow this to happen to me? I mean, what am I going to do with a kid? What's the rest of my life look like? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm that kid. And we suffered. We were on government programs. I don't need to rehash. I'll probably talk about it too much, frankly. What my childhood was like. It was either really good or really bad. And when it was good, it was really good. We had tons of great memories growing up. And when it was bad, it was really bad. We have tons of great memories of that, sadly, too. Okay? There were tons of times I sat in the basement on Royal Oak Street in Wyoming, Michigan, with my headphones on, listening to music stations, so I didn't have to hear what was going on upstairs. And then I would ask myself, if there is a God, how could he allow these sorts of things to occur? And I had no idea what it was that God was going to use my life for later on. That those experiences would help to fashion and forge me into a man that could handle somewhat and deal with what I have to handle and deal with every single day on the front lines of a culture war. That if I grew up in a really good home, if I grew up in an environment where everything was consistently defined all the time and there wasn't any dysfunction, I would really struggle. I don't know how I could do this. The fact that I didn't grow up that way helped equip me for this. What the devil, what the world meant for evil, God used for good. It's what Joseph says to his brothers. Had you not sold me into slavery, I would not be where I am today to save our people from the famine, right? And so the enemy says, avoid suffering at all costs. God says, all things work together for the glory of God and for those called according to his purposes. That he gets to turn suffering around. Mercies get to be renewed every morning. He gets to help us find meaning in that suffering, which is how we find meaning in our existence, meaning in this world. We have a Messiah as a suffering servant. That's what Isaiah calls him. That he suffered on the cross. And the disciples, what did it mean? They scattered, they ran, they hid. How did this happen? How did this occur? What does any of this mean? And then one day he shows up in the upper room and they put their hands through the nail-scarred hole, their fingers through the nail-scarred hands that he possessed, right? He made them breakfast, and then it all made sense. It had clarity, meaning, definition. And I think that's the difference between faith in a sovereign God and what the enemy wants, which is faith in ourselves.
Quote number 2 of 7. And it's really important when I say this one, you remember this is the demon from hell saying this. This isn't us saying it. We believe this, but the demon is saying this. Quote, there's no such thing as a dignified death.
Yes.
Why?
Death is an indignity. The Bible describes death as the last enemy. The last enemy. Death in and of itself is an indignity. To seek a dignified death, seek instead a worthwhile life. That's the difference. I
think the confusion comes, you draw a distinction between what you mean by this and there's no greater love than this. He who would lay down his life for his friend.
Exactly. But that's the point. What did he lay down? His life. Because inherent in that statement, see, we do this a lot. We put a humanistic spin on things. Like we refer to that one of the most famous parables of the New Testament as the Prodigal Son. Because it fits our finite minds and our biases to identify with the son who wastes his inheritance, makes a huge mistake, but in the end, after he learns his lesson, gets brought back and restored, right? We see ourselves in the son. The story is not about the son. It's a series of parables where God is talking about the love of the Father. It's not about the prodigal son. The story is about the dad. But the dad who goes down to the gate at the edge of the property and waits every day for his son to return to him. And when he does, no judgment. Slaughter the fatted calf, hand him the purple robe. The story, the hero is not the son. The hero is the dad. The reason, what is that? Love knows no greater thing than this, that a man would lay down his life. The life is what's valuable, not the death. The life is. That's a high cost. It's said in the New Testament, we are saved, redeemed at a high price. That Jesus laid down his life for us. We can't lay anything of greater value down than our own lives. And that actually is what gives our lives meaning, not our deaths. It's the other way around. We look for meaning in life, not in death. Your death has meaning if it reinforces your life. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And instead, when we talk about dignified death, it is, I've got a disease that can't be cured, so give me a drip in my home and let me go with my loved ones. Call Jack Kevorkian's van. Let me take the mask. There's no dignity in that. Death came into this world as an indignity. It was the cost, the ultimate cost of sin. So death is an indignity in and of itself.
Quote 3 of 7, and this is a slight paraphrase just to make a little more sense out of context with what became before and after. You people know the Bible passage, "Judge not lest ye be judged," because you don't want to know the rest of the book at all. You want to perish almost as much as we want to destroy you.
In the end, the only people in this world who don't get what they want are the redeemed. Because what the rest of us want is the aisle seat on the eternal smoking section. What this conversation we had Tuesday about Wonder Woman 1984 at the end.
We want what we want.
We want what we want. And what happens when we are given what we want with no restraint, no filter, what happens? The world plunges into chaos when that occurs, correct?
Yes.
We are not basically good as a species. We're not. We're not basically good. Human beings are not good. Human worth is of preeminent value. Those are two totally different things. All right? But why is human worth of preeminent value? Because of whose image we are made in. That's why. On our own, when Isaiah says that all of your righteousness are like filthy rags, the actual Jewish exegesis of that phrase, he's referring to menstrual rags. And of course, according to the law, they weren't allowed to touch unclean blood, right? And that's what Isaiah is saying. Isaiah is saying all the best efforts you could make before God to be a good person are like the rags that clean up a woman's monthly cycle of unclean blood. That's what he's saying. That's your best effort in the sight of God. So what we want, this is the struggle we have. I just did an interview yesterday with Summit Ministries, which is a renowned worldview organization in in Colorado. And I described myself as Romans 7 incarnate. And the struggle I have with that is because I'm fairly well versed as a layman in the scriptures. I know all the rationalizations my conscience is going to give, and I argue against them, and yet I succumb to them at the exact same time. Because here, in this shell, I want sin. I desire it. I want to rebel. I desire it. And so do all of you. So did Billy Graham. Think about all the great sermons Billy Graham gave. Can you even imagine what might have gone through his mind? You don't think he had never noticed hot chick in the crowd? There was never, I talked about my former pastor, Pastor Bob, the other day, right? One thing he used to say from the pulpit all the time is, you don't want to know what goes through my head most days. Because
Billy Graham did notice the hot chick. That's why the Billy Graham rule exists.
Yes, that's why he put that rule in place. He doesn't travel without any chaperoning. Yes. All right. And so what we desire is what leads to death. That's what we desire. That's what Nefarious is acknowledging. He's preaching to you right now. He's just preaching from the other side of the street.
Quote 4 of 7. We've got about 9 minutes. What you often call love is really your allegiance to your sin.
Yes, because we want to justify our sin. So I want justification for why I want to do things I'm not supposed to do.
How does this bring death upon us? This confusion.
It's the same thing you see in Wonder Woman 1984, because this is where idolatry comes from. That I love the things of this world more than the God of this world, and those are the very things. And they can be, by the way, things that are not inherently immoral. There was a time in my life I loved football in a way that it might have destroyed my own marriage, might have led to a path of destruction, right? Yeah. How many people were told through the scriptures to be thrifty, to work, to be productive, right? Use your talents to their fullest potential. Yet how many men look at Francis Schaeffer is probably the closest thing that the American Christian church has produced to an Augustine in the last 100 years. And his son, Frankie, is a fixture on cable news, trashing the Christian faith constantly for years. So with all due respect to Francis Schaeffer, whose work has been immense and has an immense influence on me and many of your believers watching right now, clearly he sacrificed something at home in order to accomplish even a great work, right? So that's my point. That even good things, righteous things, if not put in their proper perspective, can be our destruction or lead to the destruction of others.
Quote 5 of 7. If faith is the currency of heaven, then fear is the currency of hell. That'll preach right about now.
I mean, there's a reason why the number one commandment in the scriptures all the way through is some version of fear not or do not fear. Fear is hell's currency. Hell lives on it. Fear that if, I'll put up with a boyfriend that I know in my heart is not ready to be a man. But I'm afraid that I won't get somebody else that will love me, somebody else that's as handsome, that will find me pretty. So I'll move in with them. I'll let them take advantage of me because I'm afraid that I can't do any better than this. I'll kill my child because I'm afraid that I'm afraid I'm not ready to be a mom, or what will my parents think, or will people think I'm a slut? Will the church, cast me out? Will I get kicked out of my Christian school because I had a kid out of wedlock? Fear. I don't want to lose my job. So when my boss tells me, you go fire that woman who denied my sexual advances, I want her gone, you fire her. And then if you don't, then you'll be out on your ear with her. Well, I need this job. I've got bills to pay, a wife at home, a sick kid. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All these things made out of fear. This is the currency of hell. It's the fuel that is the engine of hell.
Quote 6 out of 7. I am a demon who hates your speech. This is the quote immediately after laying out what happened in the Gosnell's death chambers. I am a demon who hates your species with every fiber of my being and takes joy in causing great pain. Yet even I am disgusted by that.
I think that speaks for itself.
But you weren't being hyperbolic when you said that. You weren't going for effect. The demon's reacting to a specific instance of basically beheading living children.
Yes.
Why is even a demon disgusted by that?
Because there's a slow level. There's other more humane, I guess we would call it. That's what Nefarious would say. There's more humane ways of doing these deeds, right? And I mean, you're not 500 BC Jews who just threw their kids into the ovens for Molech. You have safe, legal, and rare means.
This is the crucial point
of making your sacrifice to the God of the God of you and your convenience, right?
Yeah.
And despite those modern conveniences, despite those technologies that would make this far less painful and quiet, you still chose barbarism.
You're the people of reason and science.
That's right.
And you're throwing the kids in the volcanoes at a faster clip than anybody. Yeah, damn right.
Flat Earth voodoo. It's what we saw with COVID all of last year.
And final, quote 7. You really are the land of the free and the home of the depraved. You now substitute your doctors for the shaman/priests of the past who carried out the execution. This actually piggybacks on what we just left. I mean, those are people in primeval pagan cultures who did not have both reason and revelation as we do now. And the notion of religion is mocked. Yet the current medical class, and boy, after a year like this year with COVID, does this even make more sense?
Yep. We've said on our show for years, the new progressivism is really the old paganism. These aren't progressives, they're regressives. They want to go back to a pre-Western civilization understanding of the world. They're druids. I mean, that's what we're dealing with here. And that's what Nefarious is resetting. I said the other day on the show that we're not getting a new song from hell in our culture. We're getting a greatest hits album, right? You remember when I said that? I think it was on Monday. Nefarious is giving you a version of that. I'm just re-racking the hits. We're just running it back. All right. And you guys, despite all of your modernity, despite all of your technology, despite all of your ingenuity, You guys are falling and reverting to the exact same tricks and scams and flat earth and voodoo that, we were running in the Neolithic age, that we were doing, 1,000 years before Christ was born, before the Sumerians created writing. You guys are falling for all of the same stuff.
He's dropping some there's nothing new under the sun knowledge on you, baby.
He just went bizarro world Ecclesiastes
Yes.
there. Yes, he did. Yeah.
Don't ever make me read this chapter again. It's disgusting.
Well, Aaron, I think that leaves you to about 2 minutes if you have something you wanted to say.
I think it can't be underscored that this notion of false notion of death with dignity, under a biblical worldview, sin and death is a curse. Therefore, as was just pointed out in this segment, it is by definition an indignity. You cannot reverse that. And we're not talking about I think there is room for conscience. I mean, heck, the last year we've been talking about what is life. Life is not just existing. Life is actually living and doing the things that make life worth living as well. So there's room for conscience in the terms of whether or not I'm 88 years old and I'm a DNR type of thing. Do I want to be revived if I'm in a car crash? Those types of things. The real rub here, though, is that the notion of death with dignity are coming largely from the same quote unquote ethicists, meaning in this context, hell soothsayers who call abortion death with dignity.
Yeah.
Those things are not reconcilable at all. So never fall for that trap. Never fall for the what would it call the sound rationalizations, the earthly philosophies like this, because that's all that they are. They're just from this world. It's a good chapter. Incredibly depressing.
Josh Hammer from Newsweek. He'll join us next. Well, the average American may have up to about 100 points they can add to their credit score and no idea how to acquire those. Well, that is where our friends at ScoreMaster comes in. It's the new credit science that will help you super boost your credit score. Forget just a few points. The average ScoreMaster user can raise their credit score up to about 60 points in about 3 weeks or less because they take all the information that the big banks have on you right now and they put it at your fingertips. Sure, you were in your mortgage lender's office and they were going through all the pages of your credit report and explaining to you why you didn't get approved or you got a crummy interest rate, and you're looking at these pages and it's Sanskrit to you, man. You don't know what it is. ScoreMaster makes this stuff all plain, transparent, and available to you in a way that you would understand. So you know exactly why you have the score you have right now. And then whether it's a home loan, auto loan, business loan, or it's just better terms on a loan that you can already get approved for, they will also give you a clear path to getting the score that you want. You can enroll in just minutes. See how many plus points ScoreMaster can add to your credit score today when you visit scoremaster.com/Steve. Again, that's scoremaster.com/Steve. Let's bring on our good friend Josh Hammer, op-ed page editor for Newsweek. Good to see you again, Josh. How are you, brother?
Always good to be with you, Steve, although some weeks are a little more difficult than others, I have to tell you.
Well, I know we're going to talk about, and you've been writing about this, Trump, his movement, his legacy, and where it goes from here. I want to show you something that our illustrious producer, Aaron, tweeted out earlier this morning. All right. Trump was impeached for a second time yesterday for inciting a riot that was pre-planned on social media, but not exclusively on the now-banned Parler, stemming from concerns about voter fraud, of which we were told there was none, but that a woman got arrested for in Texas yesterday. See, to me, and hey, again, just to reset this, I voted for Trump. Totally fine with my choice. Thought he earned my vote. Not a fan of his political brand. I'm not a guy that watches the rallies on TV. I don't like the riffing. It comes across to me as narcissistic. So I don't have any personal stake in this. Not wearing Donald Trump underoos. He's done nothing for my career on any level whatsoever. If anything, My career has suffered by the rise of Donald Trump because I opposed him so vehemently the first time. Okay, he just was I just thought he was a pretty good president, especially considering the alternatives. That's my only stake in this. Okay, so I'm not coming at this with any form of that's my team, that's my quarterback, idolatry or bias. What the hell is this whole thing about? Because I don't understand. Like, I know why the Democrats are doing what they're doing. I have no idea what the win in this is for anybody with a Republican after their name at all. I don't know what any higher principle is being. You've seen me go. If I thought there was a higher principle that my audience wasn't in favor of, I'll go with the principle. I don't know what the higher principle is here. I don't understand it because, in my view, that's a pretty good summation of what I'm seeing here in Iowa. But if I'm missing something, Josh, what is it?
So there's a lot going on here, Steve, obviously, a lot to break down. Look, the president's conduct at the rally was obviously appalling.
Quantify that for me. Specifically how?
Okay. So it was, my friend Jeffrey Scott Shapiro, I thought had he's a former prosecutor, I thought had a pretty compelling op-ed saying that it did not meet the definition of incitement under First Amendment law. You know, as a lawyer myself, I think that's totally right.
Don't tell me he crashed. Okay, he's there. Okay.
It was imprudential. There was a lack of prudence in holding that rally probably there at that time and place in the first place. And I have no problem whatsoever normal measures like censure or something along those lines.
Let's reset with him because I want to get this answer and I want to get it clearly. Okay. So let's get him reset as soon as we can. Aaron, give me a thumbs up when we've got Josh back. Okay. So just to reset where things are at. Josh said, hey, he thought the president's behavior on January the 6th at this event was appalling. And I want to specify that for me. What was specifically appalling? Okay. And we'll pick up the conversation from there. Go ahead, Todd.
He wasn't, of course, impeached, though, and I'm glad Josh brought it up. He wasn't impeached specifically because anything was appalling, although I think that's all anybody ultimately is doing it for. They think he's icky and this is the last straw. But he's right to say, and Andy McCarthy came out to also say that the incitement charge, which is specifically why they said they impeached him, it is untenable. It does not meet that definition.
Do we have him back? Okay, let's go. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry about that, brother. Go ahead.
No problem at all. My apologies there. So, look, the president's conduct was obviously irresponsible, okay? I had no issue, Steve, with any number of legal challenges. I actually supported them. I wrote numerous articles basically saying that there were any number of irregularities, peculiarities. I had a piece a week after the election saying that the mail-in ballot rejection rate was shockingly low compared to in the primaries. And I thought I have not gotten a sufficient answer for that to this date. So there was all sorts of nonsense. And to that end, I supported everything up to and including encouraging state legislators in Republican-controlled states to hold commissions at the state level and ultimately up to and including sending alternate slates of electors to the Electoral College. The deadline for that was December 14th. But between December 14th and January 6th, this notion that the vice president of the United States can be a one-man kind of constitutional wrecking ball and just kind of overturn the results of the Electoral College when the states themselves did not even send competing slates of electors, it was obviously, it was let's call it what it is. It was a lie. I have no issue with, our friends Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, folks like that, airing the objection to all the irregularities, the mail-in balloting, all of that on the Senate floor. That's probably healthy for democracy, actually, kind of air that debate at that level. The problem was continuing this lie that the vice president had this power and that this was something that could actually happen. So if you combine that with just the general kind of flaming of the passions, Trump, to be clear, is not responsible for anyone who vandalized, who hurt, or let alone killed Capitol Hill police officers. That's obviously not true. The culpability for that action obviously only ultimately lies with the actor, him or herself. So let's not mince words about that. But his actions were irresponsible. And as someone who did not vote for the president in 2016, speaking personally, largely on kind of character grounds, I thought January 6th was really the first time in his entire presidency that Trump acted in truly demagogic fashion. It was kind of exactly what I feared in 2016. I'm just kind of grateful that it lasted almost his entire term before we saw it. Having said all of that, I still oppose impeachment, which was the column that I wrote in the New York Post today, largely on prudential grounds. There's no reason to do this. He literally will not be president 1 week from today. It is purely petty, vindictive. Mitch McConnell has said that a trial, if it's going to be anything other than anything other than a Stalinist show trial, will not take place in anything other tan a Biden administration. That raises obviously constitutional concerns. Can you even convict a formally impeached president? The whole thing is nonsensical. As impeachment developed at the English common law, people like Edmund Burke, John Selden, English common law theorists who kind of came up with the entire notion of an impeachment, the idea that you could impeach and convict someone who doesn't hold office, it would be total and complete nonsense. And let alone just the fact that this country is teetering on the brink. It's a tinderbox ready to combust at any given moment, it seems like. This is just not a good course. And if Biden and Democrats actually meant what they say, they obviously don't. But if they meant what they say about trying to come together, put aside grievances, and try to unite and heal the country, this is the wrong course to go down. But I don't think we should whitewash what happened either. It was a very bad day for Trump's presidency.
Okay. All right. So moving forward, what do you think it means?
The impeachment in particular?
No, moving forward. Let me specify that more clearly. Moving forward, what do you think it means for Trump? And see, I don't think there is a movement. I think there's a personality. I don't think there's Trumpism. I think there's just Trump. I think there's a slate of issues that have taken on other iterations within the Republican Party or within the right. It used to be called the Tea Party, the conservative grassroots. They've had different variations. I think they just got quantified with a particular brand this time because Donald Trump was the most successful at tapping into those people and then mobilizing them for as an electoral force. And then I think he added a layer of people on top of that were disenchanted after broken, empty promises of political salvation from Obama, and were looking for a new savior or a new political weapon to wield. I don't think there's really like an agenda. I think the people that follow Trump, a lot of them have an agenda. I think Trump's agenda is his own political brand.
I think that's completely right. Let's be clear here. There are very few issues that Trump has substantively been consistent on over the decades. Trade is probably the first and possibly the only one that comes to mind. He was a longtime skeptic of NATO and any number of kind of international trade obligations, the WTO and things of that nature. But Trumpism, quote unquote Trumpism, is not a thing. Trumpism is a cult of personality. Here's the crucial but here. From my perspective, the analogy I use is that Trump was a wrecking ball. He brought in a massive wrecking ball and smashed up the smoldering ruins of an outmoded conservatism Inc. establishment that had gotten very, very comfortable, just kind of waxing poetic and talking about vague notions of the 1984 Reagan-Bush platform. And it was time to move on from that. It really was. It was time to reassess what an actual 21st century conservatism that deals with the real tangible concerns that people need. So to that extent, I thought the Trump phenomenon was actually very helpful. But quote unquote Trumpism is not a thing. It is a cult of personality. And this is kind of one of the key points here, I think. If we're going to continue to build on this, to build on kind of a more wholesome, communitarian, kind of like a religious, community, family-oriented conservatism that's less kind of Wall Street Journal editorial board and a little more kind of bread and butter family issues, we're going to have to do so, I think, ultimately, without Trump being the figurehead. Because with Trump as the figurehead, it ends up being about Trump. There's just no way to divorce the two because he is obviously a man who cares a lot about being the center of attention, and he cares about his ego. And those of us who care about policy, who care about the issues, who care about actually moving the ball forward and ultimately, ideally, salvaging the country from what looks like a pretty ruinous course that we're on, we have to, I think, ultimately separate quote unquote Trumpism from whatever conservatism is or ought to be in the future.
How does that occur? And how many of the people in his base want that, or are just so disenchanted with the system that all they want is the wrecking ball? They're not even looking at this ideologically.
Steve, the latter is what I fear probably more than anything. There's kind of this almost nihilism, almost like neo-paganism, honestly. You saw this a little bit in the essays of the online pseudonymous personality who goes by Bronze Age pervert. He's kind of like speaking to a younger group of kind of gym rat conservatives.
Okay. I've never even heard of that, but go ahead.
Well, he's got a big Twitter account. He's been published at Claremont websites. Not my cup of tea, but people like that have an audience, and I think that's kind of what you see in its form in events like what happened at the Capitol last Wednesday. These are not kind of your like traditional like religious conservative voters. Obviously, these are people who have just given in to anger. And I'm really not blaming anyone here. A lot of this anger is completely justified. I've written any number of columns, Steve, I know you have too, giving voice to the people who have been left behind by globalization, by neoliberalism, by jobs being outsourced, by mass immigration, amnesty, open borders, drug overdoses, the cartels. All these issues intersect with one another. And there are so many people who rightfully feel, completely correctly feel, that the elites in this country do not have their best interests at heart, that they are cynical. They just want to tell the base of the country, the rubes and flower of the country, to shut up and get in line and not oppose their woke orthodoxy. That is a pervasive, maybe even ubiquitous sentiment, I think, of the elites on the west and the east coast of this country. But the first part of your question is how we actually do this, and that's a very difficult thing to do. There are any number of kind of organizations, institutions, like Oren Cass's American Compass Group comes to mind. I'm very active with those folks that are trying to plot a substantive course forward. But the issue that any of these groups, and again, I'm involved in these groups, but the issue that all of them are going to have to deal with over the next few years is there's simply no replacing Trump as a force of personality. So it's going to be difficult trying to build upon substantively, kind of the baby seedlings, if you will, the baby seeds of what looks like a new conservatism without Trump. But I think it's our only chance of doing so, because Trump himself is, again, not particularly substantive. He only cares about himself. And what's more than that, he's just such a divisive figure. He's so divisive. And, part of that was important. Part of that was necessary. Part of it was, kind of only Nixon could go to China. Only Trump could shake up conservatism, Inc. But eventually we're going to have to figure out a way to move on if we care about policy issues. And I really don't have all of the answers here. Part of it has to happen at the grassroots level. And unfortunately, there is going to continue to be a part of the base who I think cares about Trumpism, meaning Trump personality, much more so than they care about, I think, the substantive movements that he's at least helped start.
Interesting conversation, Josh. Thanks for joining us, brother. Really appreciate having you on as always. All right, take care.
You got it.
You bet. All right, we've got about a minute here, gentlemen. Any thoughts on the conversation we just had with Josh?
What he talked about mirrors almost exactly what you and I were talking about before the show started, and just kind of the 10 minutes we had beforehand. I track almost entirely with his thinking. The only thing I mentioned the 12th Amendment. The Republicans think this was insane. It was terrible legal reasoning, shocking from Donald Trump. Here's the thing about the 12th Amendment and bad constitutional legal reasoning. That is part and parcel of every day that ends in Y. It was no more heinous or out of bounds than what we hear every day about life, liberty, marriage, taxes, Obamacare. We are out of control on every level.
Why is it any more heinous than what Mike Pence did to the First Amendment as governor of his own state?
There it is.
I don't know, man. I'm kind of more concerned about what we do with the First Amendment than the 12th Amendment, but maybe that's just me.
Me too.
I'm crazy like that. Want to thank Josh and all of you for being on, tuning in. We're going to stick around and do the overtime for Blaze TV subscribers. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow. John 3:17.